Oye, espérate y espérame. Pero vamos a hablar inglés.
Carlos, ese no es mi nombre, lo van a un cocotazo. Tienes que entender que soy muy digno, muchacho. Me da pique porque para ti soy un fracaso. Me da pique porque para los hombres soy regazo. Me da pique porque transfobio sobrepaso. Me da pique porque ellos son carrasco. Me da pique porque ellos son carrasco. Un carrasco, dale fuetazo. Un carrasco, dale fuetazo.
Que lo que mi gente. Welcome back to another episode of the VAMOS HABLAR INGLÉS podcast. I'm your host, La Reina Taína, and today I'm super excited to be sharing with you guys a beautiful story from a lovely dear friend of mine from the Dominican Republic, Agatha Brooks. We are going to be hearing her story, her journey as a Black trans woman in the Dominican Republic, specifically an undocumented Black trans woman in the Dominican Republic, and also a former short-term sex worker. And let me just say, having conversations with her is absolutely beautiful, insightful, refreshing. It is so nice to be able to be with other Black trans women and just really just kiki it up, because sometimes I feel like I'm the only galdom over here that's like experiencing Bozo City, as I like to call it, with these men. So you're gonna be hearing a lot of stuff about boys. Stay tuned. Be ready. Yeah, like I said, we're gonna be listening to Agatha's intro. The way that I'm gonna have it set up is I had Agatha send me via WhatsApp responses to 9 questions, and she also talked a little bit more about other stuff, so we're going to be hearing that. And throughout all of it, it's going to be completely in Spanish. That's her first language. So I will be, after every response of every question, I will be paraphrasing what she said in English. So yeah, it's going to be a Reina translation. So you'll find out what that means. That's gonna be my paraphrase, my translation, whatever. Yes. So we're gonna be doing that. I'm gonna be translating, and the way that I'm gonna have it is, I'll read the English of the question, then I had Agatha read the Spanish, and then I will have her response, and then after that response is my English translation. And then we move on to the next question. And that's how we're going to order it. And for a disclaimer, there's a follow-up for question 5. So there's going to be extra audio there. And then we have a nice little closer at the end where she ties everything up and gives us some, insightful stuff to leave with. So I really hope you enjoy this. Part of this was done in the Dominican Republic when I went for my birthday. And the other part was done here in the U.S. in my room, specifically in the closet. So yeah, I really hope you enjoy. We're just gonna dive right into it, into her intro and just into her story.
Mi nombre es Agatha Jamine Brooks. Nací un 27 de junio de 1988 en las Islas Bahamas, pero llegué indocumentada a los 2 años de edad a la República Dominicana, donde he existido hasta la actualidad. Hago poesía desde 2017, oficialmente como una mujer trans que se autodenominaba como poeta. Antes de eso, me creí una aficionada que hacía poesía, pero ya no puedo decir eso porque ahora sí soy poeta. ¿Y qué más puedo decir de mí? Antes me consideraba muy monógama y ahora, con toda la revolución que hay en el mundo, también me he revolucionado un poco y estoy buscando formas afectivas no monógamas para completarme, sentirme, vamos a decir, bien con una pareja, porque las mujeres trans están acostumbradas a no ser objetos de un amor incondicional de alguien, sino ser el objeto, la fantasía sexual de alguien, o principalmente de los hombres, que siempre te morbosean, te fantasean, pero no te ven como la persona para poder tener una relación oficial con ella y en público.
All right. Que lo que mi gente. So yeah, we're gonna read the questions in English and in Spanish. I'm gonna have Agatha read in Spanish, and I will be doing the English. So for question number 1, can you share your journey as a Black trans woman and how you found strength in your Black trans identity? A critical statistic highlighting the challenges faced by Black trans women, particularly in the Caribbean, is that the murder rate for transgender individuals in Latin America and the Caribbean is among the highest in the world. According to a report by the Trans Murder Monitoring Project, 2021 recorded at least 75 murders of trans individuals in the region, with trans women of color, especially Black trans women, disproportionately affected.
Agatha, ¿puedes compartir tu viaje como mujer trans negra y cómo encontraste fuerza en tu identidad negra? Una estadística crítica que destaca los desafíos que enfrentan las mujeres trans negras, especialmente en el Caribe, es que la tasa de homicidios de individuos transgénero en América Latina y el Caribe se encuentra entre las más altas del mundo. Según un informe de Trans Murder Motivation Projects, en 2021 se registraron al menos 75 homicidios de personas trans en la región, siendo las mujeres de color, especialmente las mujeres trans negras, las más afectadas.
Bueno, yo lo que puedo decir es que con el tiempo he aprendido a ser valiente y da pena decir que uno tiene que ser valiente para ser, porque ser una persona no debería ser como una prueba de guerra, y siendo trans y negra en el Caribe, y bueno, vamos a decir específicamente aquí en República Dominicana, es complejo. La gente entiende a burlarse de ti diciéndote cuarto bate por el cuerpo, y cuarto bate es algo es como insinuándote en pocas palabras que tú pareces un pelotero, y eres un pelotero porque en tu entrepierna está eh, el bate y la pelota. Y es muy complicado porque la gente te critica en la mañana, la gente te critica en el día, en la mañana, pero en la noche tú eres objeto de morbo, de deseo, y la gente se puede burlar de ti y eso. Eso es lo único que te puedo decir en República Dominicana, que casi no pasa, pero pasa. Que te matan por ser trans. Se te burlan a cantidad diaria. Pero ya cuando se llega al homicidio, que hay un odio muy grande de las personas hacia las personas trans, es como complicado.
So, in this first question, Agatha essentially says that with time, she's learned to be courageous, and that it's shameful that one must be courageous and brave in order to exist as a Black trans woman. She also said that being human shouldn't mean having to be in a constant war and a constant battle. She also said being Black and trans in the Caribbean, especially in the Dominican Republic, is very complex. You're made fun of. You can be both hated and sexualized. There's a common saying that trans women are called baseball players because of what they have between their legs, the baseball bat and the balls. That's kind of funny, but at the same time, it's very transphobic. And then also this dichotomy that exists between the desire of a Black trans woman and also just this entertainment, this joke, you know. And she also goes on to say that her existence lives on a tightrope between two realities. The people criticize you in the morning, in the daytime, but at night you're considered a whore. You're just a lustful desire. And people still make fun of you for not fitting the biological binary of what it is to be a woman, out of context, but the Dominican Republic is traditionally a very Roman Catholic country, so to add on to that. And then she goes on to say, that's all I can tell you about the Dominican Republic. It doesn't always happen that there are murders of trans women, but there are, it's not common, but it is real and it happens. And yeah, she just closes it out by essentially saying that we just fall prey to these systems of oppression. All right, so question number 2. Living in the Dominican Republic as an undocumented woman presents unique challenges. Approximately 70% of Dominicans self-identify as racially mixed or mestizo. Yet, a 2019 study by the Dominican Republic's National Statistical Office revealed that 54% of Afro-Dominicans reported experiencing discrimination based on their skin color. How has your experience living in the Dominican Republic impacted your philosophy of self, your outlook on life, and what you aspire to achieve in the future?
Vivir en la República Dominicana como una mujer indocumentada presenta desafíos únicos. Aproximadamente el 70% de los dominicanos se identifican como mestizos. Sin embargo, un estudio del 2019 de la Oficina Nacional de Estadísticas de la República Dominicana reveló que el 54% de los afrodominicanos informaron haber experimentado discriminación basada en su color de piel. ¿Cómo ha impactado tu experiencia de vida en la República Dominicana en tu filosofía del ser, tu perspectiva sobre la vida y lo que aspiras lograr en el futuro?
Es que la discriminación existe en la República Dominicana, aunque quieran decir que no, sí existe, ya sea abiertamente o indirectamente. Digo indirectamente porque hay personas que creen que dentro de su burbuja no discriminan, pero discriminan. Y los simples chistes sobre tu color de piel, como hijo de Peña Gómez y cosas así, es una forma de discriminación, porque Peña Gómez lo discriminaban por ser negro y no fue presidente porque fue negro. Entonces aquí hay una cultura de que lo negro simboliza Haití y lo haitiano es complicado para la República Dominicana. Y eso viene desde que la República Dominicana era, antes de independizarse, era una sola isla y era Haití. Y viene con este grito desde Juan Pablo Duarte, de que no quería que le dijeran haitianos sino dominicanos, para diferenciarse, para mí, desde su color de piel. Y por eso yo tengo como mis comillas con eso. Y lo vivo, porque yo soy de las Bahamas, pero la gente entiende desde mi color que yo soy negra haitiana. Los nacionalistas me llaman transhaitiano, o sea, ven que soy de la Bahamas, y no es que esté mal ser de Haití, no. Es que lo usan como para ofenderte, para minimizarte, y lo entienden como una ofensa. Es tanto así que el haitiano entiende también aquí que todo negro es haitiano. Y es por esa misma connotación.
Here she talks about discrimination. She goes on to say discrimination absolutely does exist in the Dominican Republic. Even if some may say it doesn't, it does. It exists both directly and indirectly. She says some people may claim that they don't discriminate, but in their subconscious biases, they do exhibit actions and behaviors that are discriminatory towards, minoritized populations in the Dominican Republic. And, going on to what she said regarding chistes, little comments and jokes on the side, that also tie into this systemic oppression of colorism, of anti-Blackness, and of queerphobia. Furthermore, being Black in the Dominican Republic is often met with discrimination. Agatha says Blackness in the Dominican Republic symbolizes being Haitian. That's something that she goes on to say is very complex and very problematic in many ways. You don't necessarily have to be Haitian in order to be considered Haitian. You have to be Black. She says that the issue with Haitians is a complex one and that it dates back to before the independence of the Dominican Republic, when Quisqueya, which is our indigenous name for the Dominican Republic in Haiti, it was considered one island called Haiti. And this was before the Dominican Republic obtained their independence. And this connects to Pablo Duarte, who freed the Dominican Republic and the Dominican people, and he made a point to separate himself from not only Haitians but also Blackness. And that's why this whole conversation is so difficult, as she puts it, because the literal conception, the literal birth, the literal creation of the sovereign state that we know as the Dominican Republic is embedded with this idea that I am Dominican and I'm not that, and whatever that is not Dominican. Agatha goes on to say that she endures the same level of discrimination as Haitians every single day, because although she is originally from the Bahamas, she's a dark-skinned Black woman. And race is viewed in a binary, she says. If you are visibly Black, you are automatically categorized as Haitian. Furthermore, she says the nationalists call her trans Haitian, the trans Haitian, as a way to degrade her further. And yeah, like she says, they do it to dehumanize and to demean you. In the Dominican Republic, being Haitian is a joke and a disgrace, she says. And it, like we just mentioned, it roots back to the story of Haiti. And when they call you Haitian, their intention is to offend you, she says. She closes. And now on to question number 3. Given the prevailing public opinion in the Dominican Republic, where many citizens feel that undocumented immigrants strain resources and threaten national security, how do you navigate social conversations and relationships within this socio-political landscape?
Dado el sentimiento predominante en la opinión pública de la República Dominicana, donde muchos ciudadanos sienten que los inmigrantes indocumentados agotan los recursos y amenazan la seguridad nacional, ¿cómo navegas las conversaciones sociales y las relaciones dentro de este paisaje sociopolítico?
Bueno, en el caso de las personas haitianas, yo puedo decir que, ok, usan las maternidades, usan las escuelas y todo lo demás como cualquier otro inmigrante. Pero aquí, como vuelvo y digo, en República Dominicana hay un problema con los haitianos. Porque hay más gente indocumentada. Aquí hay venezolanos, chilenos, nicaragüenses, mucha gente de Latinoamérica que viene aquí indocumentada. Pero como no es negra, la gente entiende que sí viene a aportar. Pero cuando vino el boom de lo que sucedió en Venezuela y vinieron todos los venezolanos, la gente, ay, sí, esto está lleno de venezolanos. Pero estaban contentos porque las mujeres son muy bellas y ya estaban felices hablando de que se la podían coger porque eran muy bonitas. Los hombres también, y así sucesivamente. Pero eso no pasa con los haitianos. Los haitianos sirven para mano de obra, para construir, para hacer seguridad, para pagarle al menos. Ahí sí nos molestan, pero para los demás sí molestan. Entonces es la doble moral que me molesta de aquí.
In question 3, she goes on to say that in the Dominican Republic, it's a Haitian issue when it comes to immigration. She says that when we think about the immigration problem in the Dominican Republic, we understand that it's rooted in anti-Haitianismo. And the reason why she says that is because she says that Haitians are not the only immigrants that exist in the Dominican Republic. She goes on to say that there are Venezuelans, Nicaraguans, and more, and they are also undocumented. But because they're not visibly Black, they don't mind that they exist in their country and they work in their country. Furthermore, Dominican men encourage Venezuelan and Nicaraguan immigration into the Dominican Republic due to their fairer skin, their lighter brown skin, white passing at times. It's more appealing and attractive to them, she says. Men say things like wanting to have sex with them. Furthermore, she goes on to say that the men encourage the immigration of Venezuelans and Nicaraguans and folks like that because of the fact that they have fairer skin, lighter, browner skin, and to them that's more appealing and attractive. And they go on to say that they would want to have sex with them and continue to sexualize the Venezuelan and Nicaraguan women in a way that is more endearing, I would say, compared to Haitians and just other black women in the Dominican Republic, because they're more like fetishized black women in the Dominican Republic, and lighter women are more like praised and like it's seen as like a standard. You know, we call this blanqueamiento, like I've mentioned in former episodes. And Agatha goes on to say that the worth of Haitians in the Dominican Republic only goes as far as being construction workers, maids, janitors, things like that. Things that just exist in the background, that exist within the infrastructure. She says that is when the Dominicans don't have a problem with Haitians. But she says when Haitians aspire to be anything else, it's aggressively frowned upon. And she says that there's a double standard there that not only exists, but also deeply troubles her. Question number 4. In your poetry, you often explore themes of survival and vulnerability. How have your experiences as a former sex worker influenced your work, both in the past and present? What advice you have for Black and brown trans individuals currently involved in sex work or looking to transition out of it?
En tu poesía, a menudo exploras temas de supervivencia y vulnerabilidad. ¿Cómo has influido tus experiencias como ex trabajadora sexual en tu obra, tanto en el pasado como en el presente? ¿Qué consejo tienes para las personas trans, negras y marrones que están actualmente involucradas en el trabajo sexual o que están buscando salir de él?
El trabajo sexual no es nada sencillo, no es nada fácil. Yo duré 3 meses siendo trabajadora sexual, por eso hasta escribí una obra para recopilar mi experiencia que se llama Confesiones de una pseudo prostituta, porque me sentí esos 3 meses una pseudo prostituta, como si fuera falsa, porque yo en verdad tuve la suerte de toparme con gente que no eran tan agresiva, pero sí vi gente agresiva, sí me topé gente agresiva. Uno tiene que estar exponiendo su vida en sí por 2 o 3 pesos que te van a dar para tú sobrevivir y al otro día volver a lo mismo. Y tú no sabes qué te depara el día siguiente, porque no todos los días que tú ganas muchísimo, como si eso fuera un OnlyFans y te genera cada rato, ¿no? Es tú trabajar y ver qué te sale de ese día. Y que tú dices que tú vas a juntar, no, tú te ganas lo justo para sobrevivir un día y después seguir en el otro día. Hay otras categorías que sí, que consiguen para darse una mejor vida, pero es muy complicado. Y la persona negra, en verdad, claro, marrones, como quieran decir, a los gente mestiza, es como que complicado, porque tú tienes que, como trans, cumplir con una estética muy femenina. Porque si los hombres ven a alguien más femenina que tú, siendo trans, van a ir primero con la femenina. Pero si la femenina no está ahí, es que tú vas a tener comida. Entonces también es algo muy estético que fuerza a las trans a hacer cirugías o ponerse aceite, lo que sea, para poder ganar clientes. Y es muy complicado.
Now, I really love Agatha's response to this. She goes on to say, well, sex work isn't easy. I spent 3 months as a sex worker. I even wrote a play, or the translation is a little choppy on my end. Apologies. But she wrote a poetry book regarding her lived experiences as a sex worker during those 3 months, and it's titled Confesiones de una pseudo prostituta, Confessions of a Pseudo Prostitute. And she goes on to say I felt like a pseudo prostitute. I felt like a fake prostitute because I was fortunate enough to be with men who weren't so aggressive. I did have aggressive men, but I was grateful to not have as aggressive men as other folks. She goes on to say that it's constantly risking your life for just a couple of bucks just to do it all again tomorrow. And it's not every day that you earn a lot. It's just committing to the work that day specifically, living day by day and seeing what comes of it. You never know if you get a lot of money one day or a little bit of money. She also says that there are situations where sex workers do get a better life out of sex work, but it's very complicated and it's a complicated industry. And I also agree. The sex industry is a very, very, very complex industry. She goes on to say that for Black people, in this case, Black sex workers, and in this case as well, Black trans sex workers, it's very complicated because you're living this double standard when it comes to what we always say, blanqueamiento, ¿verdad? And she says that you're constantly competing with women, cis women, and also trans women who are lighter than you, and they just appeal more to this, she says, native exoticism, right? Because remember, we're talking about also Venezuelans, Nicaraguans, other folks that exist in the Dominican Republic as well. And she goes on to say that with being trans, if you don't look as feminine as the other cis girls or the other trans girls, that impacts whether you even eat that day or not. And let that really sink in. And she goes on to say that that's why it's so common for sex workers in the Dominican Republic to get surgeries and other cosmetic things done so that they could get better clients, so that they could eat. Because not fitting the norm means you're not going to eat. If you are a sex worker, if you are a Black sex worker in the Dominican Republic, let that sink in. You know, over here in the United States and the UK, it's a lot of privilege. And all of us, we don't see just how bad it is to be trans and the concept of the struggles, right? The lived experiences that we go through as Black trans women, as trans people in general. We need to really understand that this is the case on many levels for many of us. It may not be food. It could be toxic relationships. It could be homelessness, right? Financial instability. So many things. Everything plays a role. Understanding why it is so important to let go of this gender norm, because it is literally killing people. Question number 5. Your poetry reflects your experiences with love and non-monogamy. Can you share how your journey in love and romance has evolved over time, especially as a Black trans woman navigating societal expectations? How do you see non-monogamy influencing your relationships and self-expression?
Tu poesía refleja tus experiencias con el amor y la no monogamia. ¿Puedes compartir cómo ha evolucionado tu viaje en el amor y el romance a lo largo del tiempo, específicamente como mujer trans negra que navega las expectativas sociales? ¿Cómo ves que la no monogamia influye en tus relaciones y en tu autoexpresión?
La no monogamia me salvó de muchas cosas. Yo puedo decir que mi primera experiencia oficial con la no monogamia fue la que me hizo entender que ese es mi camino. Fue una experiencia muy bonita, en verdad que sí. Me enseñó que querer es poder, porque salí con un chico y este chico no tenía problema para salir conmigo, tener citas conmigo, y me sentí tan bien. Yo dije, si eso me lo ofrece la no monogamia, es aquí, porque la gente monógama lo que me ven es escondida, a cuarto cerrado, o siendo la amante de esa persona o cosas así. Y me hizo empoderarme de una verdad, que es que yo puedo amar a más de una persona, en serio. lo puedo amar y lo puedo querer y puedo estar con más de una persona y estar bien, pero yo no uso modos jerárquicos. Jerárquico es que yo esté con uno primero y que después los demás son secundarios. No, yo trato de que todos seamos iguales en el vínculo y eso. La no monogamia llegó como para abrirme la mente y cambiar mi estructura del amor romántico, porque mi estructura del amor romántico era muy Disney, muy que yo iba a encontrar un príncipe y que esa persona me iba a respetar y ta, y que no pasó.
Question 5, Agatha goes on to talk about non-monogamy, and she says that non-monogamy saved her from a lot of things. She says her first official experience really truly helped her realize that this was her path, that non-monogamy not only is the relationship style that she wants, but it is also a practice that is helping her heal in so many ways. She says, I like to think that if there's a will, there's a way. I went out with a boy and he had no issues going out with me and taking me out on dates in public. It made me feel really good. With monogamous relationships in the past, men wanted to hide me behind closed doors. It made me realize that I can seriously love a person and I can care for them. However, I don't operate in a hierarchical structure, she says. She says that she wouldn't go from, one person or the next, that everyone in the relationship that she'll currently be in is equal. And furthermore, she said that non-monogamy also helped her realize that she needed to change her mentality, her structure, she says, on love. And she says that her former mentality was too Disney, where you find your one Prince Charming and you live happily ever after in your little castle. And she realizes that that's not for her, that's not the way to live. That's not what will bring her the joy, the love, the romance that she so deserves. And yeah, I'm really proud of her, and I'm really happy that she is setting an example for all of us. Because again, this is not to say that you have to be non-monogamous, but it's to say that you need to be open to try new things and to have different types of perspectives, because you'll never know, maybe that's the thing that has been missing in your entire life. It's that, like, you just don't notice until you expose yourself to it. So, along with question 5, I had a follow-up question for Agatha regarding perfection and its relationship with the double standard, and how we all have to constantly battle to strive for that perfection, especially when you look at it from the perspective of Christianity or Catholicism. And you're going to hear a little longer audio of her talking more about it, expanding more about it. And real quick, for folks that don't understand Spanish, I'm going to paraphrase just a little bit. It's quite long, so I'm only going to paraphrase only so much, but I'm going to put everything together so it makes sense. So essentially, she says that the double standard has always existed in society because we're required to, like I just finished saying, live up to these standards, right? And that you can only live your authenticity in silence behind closed doors, living this double standard, this double life. She goes on to say that when it comes to the beauty standards, when you fall prey to these beauty standards, especially for a potential suitor, you have already fallen prey to the binary gender norms that exist within our institutions, within the Bible, she also says, because the Dominican Republic is very Catholic. And she goes on to say that a woman in this society needs to be delicate and have long hair, and that when men are looking for trans women, especially, via Grindr and stuff like that, we are expected to shave our body and look delicate and feminine, because if not, then we're automatically going to be assumed a man by them. And by default, we are automatically undesirable. And she says that she finds it stupid. And that the kicker is, when the men want you shaven and also have a full face of makeup, that's when they want you to top them to penetrate. And this is when she goes into a whole conversation about the double standard, and this is how it really, really manifests within the trans community. And, you know, me personally, with my lived experiences, I also agree. These closeted straight men, they want to be penetrated by trans women, not by cis women, not by men, gay men, whatever may have you. They want to be penetrated by trans women with a full face of makeup. Because if you don't have a full face of makeup, then you're not a woman to them. You have to be hyper feminine if you're a trans woman, and you have to be hyper ultra feminine if you're a black trans woman. She goes on to say that this is an illusion. This conversation that straight men and just men in general say that trans women want to be submissive, that, or rather they want to top and they're into it, and that this is what they want. Agatha argues that it's actually what they want. They want to play with a girl dick. They want to bottom and experience anal sex. And I feel like, again, what Agatha said before, and what she's going to continue to say, is embracing that sexual liberation. And you'll see that throughout our podcast. She goes on to say that their solution for all of this, their desire for trans women, everything, is for trans women to have a full face of makeup, and that makes it acceptable for them to get penetrated by them, therefore making it less gay, or as Agatha puts it, making them less like faggots. And what it really gets at is that straight dudes really love penises but don't know how to communicate it. Why is that? And that's because the binary is transphobic. And it bans the teaching of your emotions, especially those emotions to want to touch, suck, or fuck, or be fucked by a penis. You know? We're not taught to communicate that. None of us, it's not just men, it's everybody. We're not taught to positively and healthily talk about our sexual experiences. That's like the only thing. And it's just like, it's crazy how like we've even made it this far as humans, living under this specific like binary. Because it's just like, so, okay, y'all want the entire planet to not talk about sex and then shame everybody, but still expect everyone to like repopulate this planet. Like, I just don't understand. I feel like that's and that's the funny part, right? Because then this is when the whole like, you know, the pro-lifers and all this other shit, it's like, weren't y'all the ones that said that like quote unquote women giving birth is like this whole thing from God, and it's so sacred and it's so important? And it's just like, I mean, obviously, even like historically and biologically speaking, obviously it is important, because if it wasn't for having children, we wouldn't have been here. Like, we wouldn't be here, right? We wouldn't be living in this society. But yet we don't talk about the most important thing that keeps us here, the thing that brings life, human life, to this planet. We're not allowed to talk about it. We're not allowed to do it better. We're just allowed to do it, but behind closed doors. Like, it seems kind of silly when you put it that way, no? Seems kind of silly, because when it comes to anything else, we're all like, oh, make sure you have this title, make sure you have this degree, oh, You can't be a doctor if you haven't gone to med school. You can't be an attorney if you haven't passed your bar, right? So why do we have all these standards? But then when it comes to sex, it's like, oh, we're not going to talk about it. Just figure it out. What do you mean? What do you mean just figure it out? Figure what out? Like, and then why do you think so many children, I'm not talking about like preteen, I'm talking about children. So many children fall to pornography to understand sex when we can just all have an open conversation. You know what I mean? But again, people feel as though talking about sex invites sex. And it's like, it only invites sex if you want it. You know what I mean? Like, it's all consensual up in here. But yeah, I digress. I hope you gain some insight from what she's about to say in this follow-up.
¿Qué decirte? La doble moral siempre existe porque la sociedad te obliga a llevar un papel que tienes que llevar y el papel que tú quieres desempeñar, pero lo haces en secreto. Entonces, cuando uno se ajusta al estándar de belleza del otro para gustarle, ya sea por amor sin paga o amor con paga, ya tú estás cediendo al binario que se estableció desde la Biblia, la iglesia, desde la sociedad misma, que todas son un conjunto en sí, que te dan el estándar de que la mujer tiene que tener cabello largo, ser delicada y y el hombre busca eso en una mujer trans, que mientras tú seas más delicada, mientras tú te afeites hasta donde no tienes que afeitarte para que ese hombre te encuentre limpio, porque si te ve un pelo ya él te recuerda que tú eres en realidad un hombre. Entonces como que eso es hasta estúpido, pero lo más complejo de todo eso es cuando hay hombres que te quieren depilada y todo, pero maquillada para que tú lo penetres. Entonces los hombres entienden que es una que le pide penetrarlo, cuando son ellos que te piden penetrarlo, pero hay un doble estándar de que los hombres crean esa ilusión de que es una que lo quiere pedir, que es una que lo quiere penetrar, cuando son ellos que lo quieren y lo desean, porque su punto es ese ano que está ahí, que su mujer no le puede tocar, o que no quiere que un hombre se lo toque como él, y él necesita que sea una mujer con un pene que se lo toque para sentirse menos maricón. Entonces como que no. Entonces la no monogamia me enseña que yo puedo estar con quien yo quiera libremente, pero con una comunicación efectiva de que estoy contigo y sé que estoy con alguien más y me estoy cuidando, y si quieres te lo presento, si quieres no te lo presento, pero te lo aclaro. Y la gente prefiere vivir en una, entre comillas, monogamia, y todos esos hombres engañando por pipa. Una experiencia reciente, un chico casado me tiró, y él tiene un tiempo con su mujer, 3 años con su mujer, casi 4, y él le pega los cuernos a su mujer con pila de mujeres. Las otras de él tuvo que con 7 mujeres diferentes en un día, y ahora él está en Grindr buscando experimentar con una trans. Entonces tú dices, ajá, que él quiere experimentar, que está curioso, pero está ahí con su mujer, y su mujer cree que ya tiene una relación no monógama, y él se dice que es monógamo, pero le pega pila de cuernos y está muy normalizado ser una persona infiel. Es mejor tú ser infiel, porque si tú eres una persona no monógama que lo dice y está con 5 gente, que 5 gente lo sabe, tú eres un promiscuo, tú eres un dañado, tú estás mal, tu nivel de depravación llega a niveles que no se llega. Pero ya ahí puso un ejemplo a ese hombre que viene y me lo dice a mí porque soy trans y él quiere curiosidad conmigo. Yo lo miro y digo, si yo digo que tengo 7 hombres, dicen que soy un cuero, obviamente. como cualquier otra mujer y que estoy mal. Pero lo hacen con Dios, sí, claro está. Pero si eso se descubre, se acaba su matrimonio. Pero para mí es más satisfactorio estar con alguien y que esa persona lo sepa. Y así no estoy con incertidumbre. La gente está como que es el juego del gato y el ratón. Esa incertidumbre de pareja de te engaño, no te engaño. Entonces, no. Y ni hablar de los hombres casados que sí buscan hombres. Y al final se siente tan reprimido que cuando están con ese hombre, hasta uno mismo lo critica porque no ejercen el rol activo como lo hacen con su mujer. Muchas veces son pasivos. Y también hay una discriminación que por eso ellos se mantienen discretos y se hacen llamar, o despectivamente uno lo llama heteropasivo. Porque tú sabes que él tiene su mujer, pero él le gusta estar con un hombre siendo pasivo. Pero eso debería ser normal, estar liberado. Y por eso la doble moral no se va a acabar por ahora, o el doble estándar. Porque estamos en una sociedad que prefiere ver como un juego y una diversión llevar una doble vida.
Sí. Y somos adultos, debemos comunicar como adultos lo que queremos.
Sí.
Yes. Question number 6. In exploring themes of intimacy and vulnerability, what insights have you gained about yourself and your desires through your experiences in non-monogamous relationships? How do these experiences inform your poetry and artistic voice?
Al explorar temas de intimidad y vulnerabilidad, ¿qué conocimientos has adquirido sobre ti misma y tus deseos a través de tus experiencias en las relaciones no monógamas? ¿Cómo informan estas experiencias tu poesía y tu voz artística?
Bueno, mi experiencia sexual ha cambiado mucho porque como mujer trans muchas veces se nos enseña a solo ser receptiva del hombre, que el hombre te penetre y tú te hagas una mamada y se acabó. Pero toparme con gente que dentro de su morbo quizás te quería tocar la entrepierna pero por morbo y tú no querías porque estabas bloqueada, porque tú entendías que no, porque tú eres mujer y no, pero tú eres una mujer trans y si no estás operada y tu genital no te da disforia, tú puedes tener placer porque tú tienes placer cuando te masturbas tú sola. ¿Y por qué no masturbarte con la persona que tienes ahí y con la que gastaste tiempo hablando y demás? Entonces hay un bloqueo también, vamos a decir, social dentro de la misma mujer trans, que se ha ido cayendo porque ya hay muchas mujeres trans que ya pueden decir que son versátiles, que son activas. Yo mismo puedo decir que soy versátil porque me abrí a la posibilidad de lo sexual. Porque la sexualidad es abrirse, explorar y sobre todo que las dos personas tengan el placer de eyacular en el acto. No como muchas veces se le enseña de que él eyaculó, se vino, tú te quedas ahí tiesa y después tú tienes que esperar que él se vaya o tú te sola para tú masturbarte pensando en ese momento que viviste para terminarte de complacer. Eso es muy fuerte. Yo siempre he dudado no monogamia, como empoderarme de mi sexualidad, de que puedo ser domina, puedo ser sumisa y eso está bien. Y que para conseguir placer no necesito solamente estar buscando hombre. También puedo encontrar placer con otra mujer.
In question 6, Agatha talks about her sexual experiences. She says that her sexual experiences have changed a lot over time, especially as an openly Black trans woman. As a trans woman, she says it's typically expected of us, of women, to be submissive to men and to be bottoms. And she said that just existing in this monogamous, in a lot of ways, heteronormative like interactions, sexual activities, sexual interactions, it, in her eyes, is very one-sided, right? Where it's her being the bottom, her giving head, and them, another layer of it as well, right, is them seeing her as a woman and them essentially not pleasuring her in the ways that she wants to be pleasured, because it's like, oh, you're a woman. And a lot of cis men and cis straight closeted men literally don't want anything to do with trans women's genitalia and pleasuring trans women's genitalia. And you know, that's a big problem outside of, you know, just talking about Agatha. That's a big problem because at the end of the day, you know, it's very controversial, right, within the community, within the trans community. But when we're talking about our physiological needs, right, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the very bottom, right, because remember, what's at the bottom is like the number one, right? So eating, right, you need to eat, you need to sleep, right, you need to bathe. But another one that's on that list that is just as important as all of that is actually having sex. We are sexual beings. If we don't have sex, it does impact our mental health. It does impact our growth. It does. Mentally, biologically, spiritually, in many ways. So our mission as individuals, as sexual beings, is to spend our entire lives figuring out what is sex and sexuality for us. What makes us feel good. Our goal should be, how can we get to the best orgasm I've ever had in my entire life? That should be everyone's goals. And Agatha goes on to say that when having sex with men, with cis men, cis straight men, it's very one-sided. It's the man's not pleasuring the woman, and that it's just them wanting to hit it and quit it. And she says that women are often left with having to orgasm by themselves and having to just think about the moment that they just had instead of being able to actually come in the moment. And then she goes on to say that that's why she appreciates non-monogamy, because there's options for versatility. There's options for her to be dominant or submissive. She says that now she's versatile and that she wouldn't have been able to do that if she wasn't sexually open, especially via non-monogamy, non-monogamous relationships. And something else that she learned, a beautiful life lesson, is that she doesn't always have to find pleasure in men and pleasure with men. That she can find pleasure with herself, and she can also find pleasure with other women. Question number 7. Research shows that individuals who feel a sense of belonging in their community are 70% more likely to engage in creative activities. According to a study published in the journal Psychology of Aesthetics, Creativity, and the Arts, individuals in affirming environments report higher levels of self-expression and creativity. How does your community influence your writing and your artistic expression?
La investigación muestra que las personas que sienten un sentido de pertenencia en su comunidad tienen un 70% más de probabilidades de participar en actividades creativas. Según un estudio publicado en la revista Psychology of Aesthetics, Creativities and Arts, las personas en entornos afirmativos informan niveles más altos de autoexpresión y creatividad. ¿Cómo influye tu comunidad en tu escritura y expresión artística?
Bueno, la comunidad en sí, la comunidad LGBT, me ha ayudado a escribir, pero para yo entender que al final todos somos humanos y cometemos errores. Yo siento que las veces que la comunidad me ha inspirado es para yo tener que dar la cara, a hacer frente, a que la gente cuestione mi arte, las palabras que salen de mi boca, cuestionarlas, hasta invalidarlas, o mi estilo de vida quererlo invalidar. Y yo tener que sacar fuerzas para responder artísticamente a esos ataques es que me ha ayudado como a quizás perfeccionar de mi arte y hacer arte para mí. Y que a la persona le guste bien, y que a la persona le guste también está bien, pero que no me afecten, porque antes sí me afectaba mucho. Y es triste decirlo, pero mayormente yo tengo gente de la comunidad como amistades, como padres y así. Y esas personas me inspiran a escribir versos de amor, versos de alegría y así.
In question 7, I ask Agatha about the impact that the LGBTQ plus community had in her creative writing. She goes on to say that her queer and trans community within the Dominican Republic did impact her writing, and that it helped her understand that at the end of the day, we're all humans. She furthermore says the moments where her community inspires her is when she's challenged, when she is challenged and encouraged to show face, to present her art, present her poetry. And she really loves it when people ask her questions regarding her art and in a way give positive criticism. And she also says that she also invites negative criticism. She used to not take it well, but now she's saying that it doesn't affect her and that she's open to all experiences of her art. And that's something that's really beautiful. She furthermore says that she has a lot of people within her community who act as friends, as parents, and as more. And they inspire her every day and shower her with love, and that carries her in her creative writing.
Question number 8. What message do you hope to convey through your poetry to those who may feel disconnected from their identities?
¿Qué mensaje esperas transmitir a través de tu poesía a aquellos que pueden sentirse desconectados de sus identidades?
Bueno, el mensaje que yo quiero transmitir con mi poesía es que uno tiene muchas interseccionalidades que le atraviesan, pero al final de cuentas, una mente solamente es un humano y que la gente se puede identificar con mis palabras y se puede ver reflejado en mis palabras y que o alguien diga, mire, eso se refleja en fulano o fulano, en fulano, fulana o fulane. Eso ya es suficiente satisfacción para mí.
In question 8, she says that one has a lot of intersectionalities that impact their lived experiences, but at the end of the day, we are all human. People can relate to my words, my art, myself. She wants her audience to see themselves in her, or maybe her words, or maybe her art, her poetry. That'll bring her true joy, she says. She just wants people to find something within her and her art that is a part of them. Because there is always something that you can find in someone that you can find in yourself.
And last but never the least, question number 9. Any last thoughts you wish to share with our audience today?
¿Algún pensamiento final que desees compartir con nuestra audiencia de hoy?
Vive y deja vivir. Y mientras más te enfoques en vivir tu presente, con miras hacia un mejor futuro y olvidarte del pasado. Y que solamente cuando recuerdes el pasado sea una herramienta para que te empuje a seguir ese presente que te llevará hacia el futuro, será lo mejor que puedes hacer con tu vida.
She says, live and let live, as her final words to our beautiful audience today. Live and let live. She says the more you focus on living, the better your future will be. She advises you all to not dwell on the past. And when you reflect on the past, use it as fuel to push forward. That's the best thing you could do with your life.
¿Qué puedo decir? Mayormente la sexualidad de la mujer trans es muy compleja. No es de que muy compleja en sí, sino que todo el morbo que hay alrededor de uno, la fantasía, hace que una sea vista como algo no humano cuando uno es humano. Y no es que no ven como un unicornio, pero es como si fueran un unicornio. Es como que los hombres entienden que buscando una mujer trans hay algo diferente en lo sexual porque somos mujeres que tenemos pene, ya. Entonces, es como que voy a tocar un pene y no va a ser de un hombre, sino de una mujer. Porque ella dice que es mujer, entonces si ella dice que es mujer, yo voy a aceptar que ella es mujer. Pero después que se acabó el deseo y van y te ven en la calle, te voy a decir que tú eres un maldito hombre. Entonces tú te quedas como que, ajá. Y entonces, porque hay hombres que sí te aceptan, que saben que tú eres mujer y punto. Pero la gente te cuestiona y mucha gente he escuchado que hasta pueden decir que en contadas ocasiones han luchado por los derechos de la persona LGBT. Y dicen de que con todo y todo usted sigue siendo un hombre. O sea que a pesar de todo en el subconsciente, aunque yo diga que soy una mujer, tengo que agregarle lo trans para que lo trans sea el recordatorio de que yo sigo siendo un hombre. Y que si yo me pongo enfrente, un ejemplo, en una confrontación con una mujer que tiene vagina, yo tengo que recordar que yo soy menos mujer que ella porque tengo pene. O porque biológicamente se dice que todo esto que está dentro de mí es biológicamente masculino. Y ya por eso toda mi existencia tiene que ser reducida de igual manera. No hay de que una igualdad femenina, no, porque si yo digo que soy una mujer sin lo trans, la gente va a entender que yo tengo vagina. Y si no tengo vagina, ya. Entonces, esa es otra cosa. Así como hay una idealización, no se puede decir. No, idealización no es la palabra. Hay una fascinación sobre el falo. Hay una fascinación sobre la vagina. Porque cuando uno está a veces en espacios, lo digo porque yo he estado en espacios femeninos y yo soy la única mujer trans y tú ves que todas hablan de la vagina. Y mi vagina, ¿dónde está representada ahí? Ah, no está representada porque eso representa el hombre, y tú te quedas como que yo soy mujer, pero tengo un defecto o tengo una cosa. Y es como que, ajá. Si todas somos mujeres, si tú tienes una vagina, yo lo sé. Y no la estoy echando al menos, obviamente. Porque ningún genital se echa al menos. Porque hay hombres que tienen vagina y no por eso hay que echarlo al menos. Sino que te digo la forma. Si tú sabes que hay una mujer trans y tú tienes un espacio con mujeres que todas son cis, alguien te pregunta, te tiene que como acercarte y decir, ¿cómo tú te sientes con tener una vagina diferente? Porque o eso le va a quitar peso a alguien. Porque si tú quieres entender que esto que te mente piel es una vagina, ya. Pero dicen no, que es un pene, que hay constructos y que uno quiere imponer cosas, pero las cosas tú sientes que le imponen cuando afecta tu modo de pensar, tu, es- tu burbuja que te creaste para comprender la realidad. Entonces la realidad hasta cierto punto es unilateral. Hasta donde yo dejo que sea unilateral. Ya cuando me afecta o algo, no es unilateral. Pero si le afecta a otro, fuck up. Eso, como que no sé, como que tener ese pensamiento sobre una corporalidad es tan complejo que uno podría dormirse aquí hablando de ese tema. Pero específicamente de eso, de la persona trans, es los genitales. Hay muchas personas que piensan que la solución de nosotros para ser trans totalmente es que uno se haga la resignación de sexo y ya. Así la gente lo va a poder. Pero igual, he visto trans, no que conozco, pero he visto youtubers o influencers, lo que sea, que son trans y que se han operado su vagina. E igual la gente sigue diciéndole que un hombre y tú te quedas como que, pero ¿hasta dónde es? Que uno tiene que llegar para que la gente entienda que tú eres una mujer y ya. Ay, ya, me callé. Porque si me dejas aquí voy a amanecer.
Okay, we really made it to the closer, honestly. So I'm just so shook. I'm so It was so insightful what Agatha just said. Like, I'm just speechless. Where do I even start? Well, essentially, she talks about, she starts off with saying that, living as a trans woman is very complicated. There's constant desires and fetishizations that dehumanize us when we are actually human, but nonetheless we are unicorns, especially to men. And that when it comes to finding women, she goes on to say that we are unicorns, especially to men. And to men, finding trans women comes with the excitement of essentially touching a girl dick instead of a boy dick. And that's what she bases this entire final thought, this closer with. That in her experience, and also I'll throw in my experience as well, with having sexual relationships with straight men, closeted men with girlfriends. It's about the genitalia. And she goes on to say that when it comes to, having these sexual relationships with these men, and these interactions begin, they accept you as a woman, right? They accept you as identifying as a woman because they want to have sex with a penis, but they want to have sex with a penis that's not attached to a man because they don't want to be seen as quote unquote a faggot, as Agatha said. And, for that moment, for that sexual experience, for that night, he accepts you and affirms you for your gender. She goes on to say that, however, the next day when he sees you on the street, he's going to call you a man. And for me, it's like, just even having her like say this out loud is like so triggering because it's so true. It's like trans people are seen as easy and we're expected to be easy, and that we're this like experience. We're just sexual organs. And because the dialogue surrounding trans people always are founded in our genitalia, which are sexual organs, we're always associated with sex and only sex. And it's easy, right? Because you can literally go on Grindr right now and you can find any type of trans woman you want, any type of whatever, as a DL whatever, on demand, faster than an Amazon shipment. You feel me? And it's like, it gets to a point where where do we draw the line? Because this is almost all of us as trans women that experience these things. This is not like one or two, it's not like white women, black women, it's just like one or two, three, whatever. Like, this is an entire population of people that identify with the same identity. That's a problem. It is a really big problem that a population of people is only seen as quote unquote prostitutes. That's a problem. There is not one person on this planet that their sole purpose is to get fucked, unless it is a BDSM consensual kink activity. But still, no human is born to just be a fuck toy, to be this just sexual thing for other people to use. That's the problem. And she goes on to say that. She goes on to say that for a lot of people who do affirm her gender in open spaces, they say that, despite the fact that they call her a woman, she calls herself a woman, she will forever be seen as a man, dressed as a woman rather. And she goes on to say that society reminds her and all trans women really, that if she stands next to a woman with a vagina, she needs to remember that she is less of a woman than that woman with a vagina. She says that this is the default and that this is common knowledge that we all live under. and that it always falls back to Agatha's biological sex instead of who she is in that present moment. She goes on to say that there really is no equality when it comes to all women and all women being seen as women, because she tells someone that she is a woman, or when she tells people that she's a woman without revealing that she's trans, people assume that she has a vagina, right? Because, you know, someone tells you they're a woman, someone tells you they're a man, you're going to automatically think, okay, vagina, penis, got it. And if this individual identifies as a woman and doesn't have a vagina, then she's not what she says she is. That's what this society is teaching us and our children. Right? She goes on to say that there's a fantasization for the penis and the vagina. And honestly, like, with my own expert, like, academic, nerdy ass independent research knowledge, like, it is absolutely true. Like I finished saying, like, we are all sexual beings, and there is this fascination with the penis and the vagina. For folks out there that are parents, shout out to all of my parents out there. A special shout out to all of my trans parents. But for all of us that are parents and, you know, raise children, specifically like infants and toddlers, we know this. We know that, especially for AMAVs, but for all children, they are curious about their genitalia. And they're constantly playing with that shit. But guess what? It's their genitalia. And it is normal because we are humans and we are sexual beings. And it is important for us as individuals in our private spaces, right? In our private spaces to explore ourselves and to understand our physique. Agatha goes on to say that our genitalia determines our gender identity because that's what society agreed upon. She goes on to say that for men, in her case, the men that she has talked to her entire life, all these different men across all different walks of life, that their mentality is linear, right? It's and because it's linear, they find it difficult to understand that a human with a penis can also be a woman. She sees this in the men who only date cis women and whom she talks to for the first time, whether it be on Grindr or elsewhere. She says that having a mentality that's only limited to the human physique is a topic that is so complicated that she says we can be here all day talking about it. And in closing, when it comes to trans women, this dialogue of existence, she says, this dialogue of existence of humanity is always going to be centered around genitalia. And because we are only associated with sexual organs, we are also only seen as sexual organs entirely and nothing more. So, that is our podcast. So, in this podcast, we had a beautiful conversation with Agatha, and just thank you so much, Agatha, for your candor, for your beautiful stories, your experiences, your poetry, and I wish you nothing but the best when it comes to everything, your art, your life, all that great stuff. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Next episode 4, we are going to be talking about EAPs, emotionally immature parents, and we are actually going to be inviting another guest. Y'all may know him, AJ Ravi Kamal. He will be coming on our podcast to have a conversation about EAPs from our lived experiences, but also from our academic and independent research that we've conducted this past year. And I'm very excited to really get into the nitty gritty. I've given all of you, I guess, a month, right, with my album Toca Corazon. You'll know that track 1 and track 2 are about emotionally immature parents, my former emotionally immature parents. Listen to them. Listen to those tracks, those songs, and then we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about all that, where the word comes from. Because disclaimer, AJ and I did not make up the word eeps. Some folks believe that, but no. I'm flattered though. Stay tuned. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be really insightful. I hope so far you're getting something out of this podcast. This is number 3. I'm very impressed that I made it this far. In terms of being consistent, ADHD things. Much love, much blessings. I feel like at this point, anyone that's been listening to this all the way through, you're a trooper, period. AJ always likes to say that he likes to hear me talk. So I hope you like to hear me talk too. And I hope to see you next time in December. I hope you have a beautiful holiday. And as always, vete con Dios y que Dios te da amor, salud y sabiduría. Mwah.
No pasa nada.